I'm Caitlin Matson. This is the Green Room. Newton-Mid-Kansas Symphony Orchestra. They begin their season, kicking it off this Sunday with a performance, Sunday, October the 8th, a program titled Mountain Vistas. I have in the Green Room Dr. Chris David Westover-Muñoz, the music director, conductor of the Symphony Orchestra, to tell us all about this concert and what's in store. Hello, how are you?
I'm well, Caitlin. Thanks for having me this afternoon. We're really excited about this concert for a whole host of reasons. Um, I guess first of all, I'll say that we're really delighted to welcome the Newton High School Orchestra and Newton High School choirs to be partners with us on this concert. The choir will be singing the famous Finlandia chorale with us at the end of the concert, and the Newton High School Orchestra will be performing with us on the Finlandia and also Alan Hovhannis's Mysterious Mountain Symphony. So that's a real highlight. The orchestra was founded in the 1950s as a partnership that included the orchestra director at the high school, and so it's been a long time since we've worked together in this way, and it's really exciting.
Tell us about this Alan Hovhaness, a name that's not a household name. You wouldn't call it one of the most well-known classical composers, but if you are a musician, chances are you hold him in great esteem.
Yeah, Alan Hovhannes came from Armenian heritage, and a lot of his music draws on that musical sources from that part of the world. He wrote this piece. This is kind of his breakout hit from the 1950s. He wrote this piece, I think, for Leopold Stokowski, and in fact, it was just titled Symphony Number 2. And then the person who's writing the program notes for the concert remarked on something about the character of the piece. And he said, "Why don't you call it Mysterious Mountain?" And that name stuck ever since. It's a remarkably beautiful piece. A series of images, a series of kind of vistas, folk music, some folk music that will sound kind of familiar to folks. There are moments that are a bit Copland-esque, and then there are moments that are, well, you just have to hear it. I don't know quite how to describe it.
Yes. And this is a 20th century composer.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was probably the most prolific symphonist of all of classical music. He wrote more than 100 symphonies for all kinds of different groups. Symphonies, this piece was famously recorded by Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony, I think in the early 60s. But he wrote for bands, for orchestras, for chamber groups. He wrote several pieces for the American Wind Symphony, the group that toured on a barge between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh in the 70s and 80s. So he's a really prolific composer who I think is a 20th century composer that's hard not to like, because the music is so, I think, cinematic.
I think that's a wonderful way to describe it. Yeah, you feel as if you're listening to a film score. It's imaginative. You find yourself relating to what you're listening to, and it's easy to digest. So often we think of a contemporary composer or a 20th century composer, and as an audience member, you get a bit scared. Am I going to understand it? Am I even going to like what I hear?
Yeah, this is, I did this piece a year ago in Ohio, where I live, and I think none of the members of the orchestra had played this piece, or maybe any pieces by Alan Hovhannes. And by the end of the cycle, it was just like a piece that was so close to their heart, because there were just heartrending moments of beauty. So I'm really looking forward to sharing it with Newton-Mid-Kansas, but also with the high school musicians.
Fantastic opportunity for Newton High School musicians to join with the symphony and sing and play the Sibelius Finlandia. The Finlandia hymn, it kind of depends what church you grew up in. A lot of us knew it as the hymn, Be Still My Soul. What lyrics are paired with that melody when you're singing the Finlandia piece by Sibelius with an orchestra?
I'm so glad that you asked about this. We spent a lot of time thinking about this. When Sibelius wrote the piece, he didn't write words. And in fact, he actually didn't like the piece being performed with words, but he eventually had to acquiesce because it became his most famous piece. The piece is actually a kind of a patriotic work from a period when Finland was dealing with Russian imperialism. Patriotic works by Finnish composers were not allowed to be performed. There's maybe a contemporary resonance of this piece. So you're right, Be Still My Soul is probably the most famous text with this, but we're using a text that was written by a 20th century hymn writer that was made famous by Joan Baez in the 1960s, who sang this, the Finlandia hymn, at many of her rallies and performances. It's a song about peace, peace between all of the nations, recognizing that other lands are just as beautiful as my own, and everyone has dreams just as meaningful as my own. It's a really powerful text.
Joan Baez approved.
Yes.
That's high praise. I think we
Yes.
should make sure people know that. This is a Joan Baez approved concert of the Newton-Mid-Kansas Symphony Orchestra, joined by Newton High School Orchestra and Chorus. It is this Sunday, October the 8th at 4 o'clock, Bethel College Memorial Hall. We are going to listen to a little bit of this Alan Hovhaness Mysterious Mountain Symphony, his second symphony. I've queued it up to the third movement. What do you have to say about this third movement? Is there anything we should be listening for?
Well, there's so many great moments that are favorite moments, but this is the middle of the third movement is where the orchestra really just lets go. I think everyone loves playing this moment. The winds have been waiting for it the whole piece, because the brass get to just open up, and it's again cinematic. It's and also fantastical. It's like, the earth rips open and a volcano or something erupts in the middle of the orchestra. Yeah.
We'll be back and talk more with Dr. Westover-Muñoz from the Newton-Mid-Kansas Symphony Orchestra. That is the third movement of Symphony Number 2, Mysterious Mountain. It is by Alan Hovhaness, and a work that the Newton-Mid-Kansas Symphony Orchestra is performing this Sunday at their opening concert. And I have their conductor with me right here, Dr. Chris Westover-Muñoz. We were talking about what is on the program. We touched base on the Finlandia by Jean Sibelius, a tune which most of us are familiar with, especially if we grew up with a hymnal in our hands, singing Be Still My Soul in church. Yeah. But what else is on the program here? I see a work by Margaret Bonds.
Yeah, this is this is why I said there's so many things to be excited about. This Margaret Bonds piece, there's a really fascinating story about this. She wrote this in 1964 after having been part of the Freedom Rides in the South, and dedicated the work eventually to Martin Luther King Jr. The piece is based on a spiritual, I want Jesus to walk with me. And again, this is another, just like what you said about the Hovhaness, this is a 20th century work, but it's really hard not to like this piece. The audience will not have any trouble kind of following how she plays with this tune in different settings and tells the story, through the piece. But this piece actually was only premiered in, I think, 2019.
Was it really?
It was lost, and in fact, was almost destroyed. It was never performed. There was a score, and through a series of events, the score and some other boxes ended up not having been sold at a used bookstore, and they ended up next to a dumpster in Washington, D.C., I believe, and somebody just happened to go through the box and realize that there were some things that needed to be not destroyed. So this piece is just now actually building a real performance history. There's a great recording. I don't think it's actually, there are no commercial recordings. It was recorded by the Minnesota Orchestra, I think in 2020 or 2021.
Yeah.
That's available on YouTube.
What a fascinating work. I was just reading a little bit more about it. Margaret Bond's piece. The title is The Montgomery Variations. Montgomery, a reference to Dr. Martin Luther King's march.
Yeah.
Was it 4 or 5 day march in Montgomery?
Yeah.
To the Capitol. Lost. Nobody ever knew it existed. I guess you can't lose something you never knew existed, but found suddenly by a dumpster. This
Yeah.
brilliant work by Margaret Bonds.
Yeah.
So really, it's only been heard a few times, probably.
I'm pretty sure that this is the first performance. This is the Kansas premiere. There have probably been 10 or 15 performances of this piece in the last couple of years, and audience members will hear why. It's just such a great, compelling piece. It's beautiful. It touches on the tragedy of this period, specifically the 16th Street church bombing that we just, I think in 1963, we just celebrated the 60th, or remembered the 60th anniversary of that event. Yeah.
Margaret Bond's Montgomery Variations on the program, along with Mysterious Mountain, the Second Symphony of Alan Hovhaness, the Newton High School Orchestra and Chorus joining the Newton Mid-Kansas Symphony Orchestra. For information on Newton Mid-Kansas Symphony, go to their website, NMKSO.org. That acronym stands for Newton Mid-Kansas Symphony Orchestra.org. You can buy tickets in advance through their website, or you can purchase them at the door. So you have a whole season planned. What else is on it?
Yeah. Well, in January, we have our Winter Classics concert, and that, of course, will feature our 2 winners of the Dwight Beckham Young Artists competition. So I know we'll have wonderful young artists, but I don't know who they are or what they'll be playing. I get to find that out in November. But the part of the program that we selected is kind of riffing on this idea of students and teachers. We're going to play, again, Jean Sibelius, his 3rd symphony, and then a work of his student, Rautavaara, a piece called Cantus Arcticus, a concerto for birds and orchestra. It's a really lush, romantic piece that features live recordings of birds in Finland and throughout Scandinavia that have been paired and worked into the orchestra. It's a really beautiful piece. And of course,
fascinating.
He found so much inspiration in birds and swans, in particular in the 5th Symphony. So it's a really nice pairing, student and teacher. You'll be able to hear that relationship. And then in April, we're welcoming, actually, this is the first year we've had a 3rd classics concert since, I think, before the pandemic. So we're excited about having that come back. And
congratulations.
Thank you. It's really lovely to see so many arts organizations coming back. We're going to present in April a program that features kind of 2 musicians that maybe not two composers maybe folks wouldn't necessarily associate with each other, but I can't help but think of them connected. Gustav Mahler and Franz Schubert, both great composers of songs. So we're going to feature Franz Schubert's Unfinished Symphony, and then we have a wonderful soprano, Nicole Van Every, who's an internationally renowned soprano coming up from Oklahoma to sing Mahler's Songs of a Wayfarer, and then a couple of Schubert songs that have been orchestrated. So that'll be a really lovely afternoon of really songs with orchestra.
Newton Mid-Kansas Symphony Orchestra, their first concert of the season is this Sunday, October the 8th. It starts at 4 o'clock. It is going to be at Bethel College Memorial Hall. You can get more information or buy tickets in advance on their website, NMKSO.org. Thank you for coming on and telling us all about your season. Come back. Please come back soon to tell us more about your next concert coming up.
Thank you so much for having me, Caitlin.